Dust rose in thick clouds around the auction block on the edge of the town of Deadrock, where law was a rumor and mercy a myth. The sun hung low and mean in the sky, casting long, gold-edged shadows on the dirt as the townsfolk gathered like vultures around a spectacle that shouldn't have been allowed but wasn't exactly new out here. Ezekiel Copeland stood on the crate, his coat stained, beard yellow by tobacco and rot-gut whiskey. He tugged forward 4 girls with rope tied loose around their wrists. Their eyes were rimmed with red, skin sun-seared, dresses torn at the hems. The oldest, a woman barely in her mid-20s, held a squalling baby to her chest. The others were younger, one no older than 16, with straw-colored hair and eyes that didn't blink. "For good Christian daughters," Ezekiel rasped, swayed with the bottle still clutched in his free hand. "Ain't a skin for the world, just enough to keep from starving. The Lord provides through man's charity." There were murmurs among the crowd, some sick with shame, others greedy with intent. Ezekiel's wife had died 2 winters ago, or so the whispers said, hung herself in the barn after a season of beatings and silence. Since then, Ezekiel had been sliding down a hole too steep to climb out of. Now, he was selling his daughters, all he had left, like cattle at a fair. From the edge of the road, a rider slowed. He wore a long coat that bore the dust of many miles and the wear of many years. His rifle was tied beside the saddle, and a wide-brimmed hat shadowed eyes that missed little. The horse, gray with scars across its flank, stopped as though it knew this place held trouble. Caleb Grant stepped down and tied the reins to a fence post. At 53, his hands were weathered from ranching, his back bent from war. He'd lost his wife to fever and 2 daughters in childbirth. Only his 4 sons remained, each broken in their own way by loss, war, and time. He didn't speak as he approached the crowd, didn't nod or tip his hat, just watched with eyes that could turn a man's knees weak if he had anything worth hiding. One of the girls noticed him, the eldest, Rebecca. She held her baby tighter, narrowing her eyes as if to ask, "Are you another wolf?" Ezekiel saw him too. "You looking to buy, mister?" he slurred. "Fine stock here. Good hips, strong backs." Caleb didn't answer immediately. Instead, he turned to Rebecca, met her gaze with something solid. Not pity, not hunger, just the kind of weight a man carries when he's buried too many dreams. "How much?" Caleb asked quietly. Ezekiel blinked, swayed. "All 4. Caleb nodded. The crowd went silent. 200. Ezekiel said with a chuckle, "Take the baby, too. You'll get used to the crying." Caleb reached into his coat. From an oilcloth pouch, he counted coins, slow, deliberate. He dropped them in the dust at Ezekiel's feet. "I'll take them as daughters-in-law. I ain't in the business of owning people." A few gasps echoed. A drunk near the saloon barked out a laugh. But Rebecca's chin lifted just slightly. Ezekiel didn't care. He lunged for the coins like a dog and staggered away, already muttering about whiskey and redemption. Caleb turned to the girls. "You're free to walk away," he said. "But if you ride with me, there's a ranch 3 days west with 4 cabins and 4 men who need more than just land to live on. They need someone to stand beside, not behind." Silence. The youngest girl looked to Rebecca, then back at Caleb. Her lip trembled, but she didn't speak. Rebecca stepped forward. "Are your sons cruel men?" she asked. "No," Caleb said. "Just wounded ones." She nodded once. "We'll ride." And so they did. By the time night fell, they were a slow procession crossing the prairie, the moon guiding their way like a watchful eye. Caleb led on horseback, while the girls rode in a buckboard wagon behind. They spoke little. Rebecca sat nearest the front, her baby sleeping in her arms, his cheeks red from the wind. Caleb occasionally glanced back. Their silence didn't worry him. Sometimes silence meant safety. He'd learned that in war. Still, he couldn't help wondering what fire they'd come from, and what flames might still be chasing them. At midnight, they made camp under boughs of a twisted juniper tree. Caleb offered jerky and bread, which the girls took politely. Only after the fire crackled, and the baby cooed, did one of the sisters, the second oldest, dark-haired and quiet, speak. "You got names for these sons of yours?" Caleb nodded. "Samuel, Jacob, Luke." Eli. Bible names, she murmured. They had a mama who believed in things like that. And you? Caleb looked at the flames, the memory of his wife's eyes rising in the sparks. I used to believe in a lot of things. Now I believe in work. And in giving folks a chance to be better than what they come from. Rebecca watched him closely. He didn't smile, didn't preach. Just sat there with the weight of something buried deep. They bedded down in the wagon and under the tree. The baby nestled between quilts Caleb's wife had sewn before the fever took her. The stars blinked high above, and the wind hummed low. At dawn, they broke camp and crossed a narrow canyon. Vultures circled in the distance. That's when they heard the rustle. Caleb pulled his rifle before the sound fully registered. Someone stumbling through the brush. Then a figure collapsed into the trail. A native man, bleeding badly. Arrows stuck out from his back, and his chest heaved. Caleb leapt from his horse. "Ahoot!" The man groaned. Blood soaked the dirt. In his trembling hands, he clutched a carved wooden medallion. He shoved it into Caleb's palm, fingers slick with blood. "They burned the Mesa camp," he gasped. "Took the children. Heading south." Caleb's jaw tightened. Rebecca stepped down, eyes wide. "Who did this?" Caleb demanded. Ahoot coughed, once hard, then went still. The girls huddled around the wagon, fear creeping into their faces again. Caleb stood slowly, his hand still wrapped around the medallion. "We don't go straight home now," he said, voice low. "We ride east. There's a devil needs reckoning." The wind picked up, lifting dust off the trail like the ghosts of the past coming to ride alongside them. And just like that, the journey turned from rescue into reckoning. The storm came in before sundown, rolling dark clouds over the prairie like a great cloak dragging across the sky. The air turned sharp, cold, and strange. The kind of air that made animals restless and men checked their rifles twice. Caleb led the wagon off the main trail and up toward the canyon ridge. Below lay the Mesa settlement, or what was left of it. Smoke still rose and slow, black spirals from the ashes. Tents were flattened. The central longhouse collapsed. There were no bodies, no cries, no sound of life, just silence and smoke. Caleb's jaw flexed. This was a peace camp, he said, dismounting. They took in orphans, runaways. Ahoot helped build it after the war. Rebecca stood beside him, holding her baby tighter against her chest. "Where are the people?" "Taken. South," he said. "Probably to Red Hollow," Caleb muttered, scanning the tracks. "Isn't that mining territory?" one of the younger girls asked. "Down near the border?" Caleb nodded. "Where the law don't ride. Slavers operate under fake contracts. Indian children, Mexican girls, white runaways, doesn't matter. They vanish." He knelt by the wheel ruts in the dirt. "Fresh. Heavy. Wagons. 5 of them. They're a day ahead," he said, rising. "Too far to track tonight. We camp high and move at first light." That night, under a sky half lit by lightning and half loss of memory, they set up camp beneath the bluff. Caleb's sons wouldn't know he was coming back with 4 women. He hadn't planned this part. He hadn't planned any of it. But he also hadn't planned on hearing Ahoot's last breath, or seeing fire licking through a sanctuary for children. He couldn't just go home. One of the girls, the dark-haired one, Miriam, offered him coffee brewed over the fire. She handed it with both hands, quiet and respectful. Caleb took it, nodded once. "You knew him?" she asked. "Ahoot? Yeah. He saved my life during the war. Twice." "What was he like?" Caleb looked at the fire for a long time before answering. A man who never said more than he needed. But when he did speak, folks listened. He lost his tongue in a raid when he was a boy. Used to say it gave him better ears. Miriam sat beside him, drawing her shawl tight. "Why'd you come to that auction, Mr. Grant?" He sipped the coffee. The wind picked up, scattering sparks. "I didn't plan to," he said. "Went into town for salt, land, and oil. But I saw you girls up there, and I remembered what it means to be a father." He didn't say more. Didn't have to. The storm broke in the distance, thunder groaning low across the plains. Rebecca rocked her baby and watched Caleb from the shadows. When the dawn came, they moved. They followed the wagon tracks through scrub and sage, over dry creeks and wind-cut hills. Vultures circled overhead. Once, they passed a boot nailed to a tree, the old signal of bandits staking ground. Near noon, they came across an old man hanging from a post, a placard tied to his chest. Spy! Rebecca covered her sister's eyes. Caleb dismounted, cut the man down, and whispered something none of the girls heard. They rode on. By late afternoon, the trail narrowed between two ridges. Caleb slowed, sensing it before he saw it. "Stop the wagon," he said, raising his hand. A rifle cracked, the echo rolling like thunder off the stone. The bullet struck the dirt inches from Caleb's horse. Then a voice. "Don't move, mister. You're in our canyon." 4 men stepped out from the rocks, dust-covered, guns drawn, hard eyes behind handkerchief masks. One of them wore a red sash tied around his arm. Slavers. The kind that took girls and never called it evil. Caleb raised both hands. "We ain't looking for trouble." The leader, a tall, hawk-nosed man with yellow teeth, stepped forward. "That so? You're following the trail of our wagons." Caleb's voice stayed level. "Looking for children taken from Mesa. You took him. That makes you a problem." The man laughed. "You think you're going to fix this world. Old man, you ain't got the numbers." Caleb's eyes flicked upward, over the ridge. A small glint. Bang. A rifle cracked from above. The hawk-nosed man jerked back, blood blooming from his chest. More gunfire. Dust exploded around the wagon. Caleb ducked, returned fire from behind his horse. From the rocks came a shout. Jacob Grant, Caleb's second son, firing down with precision. Behind him, 2 others, Luke and Eli, joined in. The ambush turned. 1 outlaw fled, wounded. 2 fell. The 4th raised his hands. When the smoke cleared, Caleb walked to the survivor. "Where are they?" he growled. The man trembled. "Red Hollow, east of the gorge. They're holding the kids in the old salt mine." Caleb stared him down. "Run, and don't look back." The man bolted. The girls climbed from the wagon. Dazed, Jacob approached, rifle still hot. "Pa," he said, nodding at the sisters. "You bring home company?" Caleb almost smiled. "Something like that." Rebecca stepped forward, the baby on her hip. "I'm Rebecca. These are my sisters." Jacob blinked. "I'm Jacob." Their eyes met for a beat too long. Then Jacob nodded, suddenly shy. "Let's get moving," Caleb said. "We got a mine to burn down." That night, they camped again. The girls huddled close to the sons. Awkward at first, until Luke offered the youngest a blanket, and Eli fixed the wagon wheel without being asked. Caleb sat alone near the fire. Miriam came to him, then Rebecca. The baby slept between them. "You going into that mine?" Rebecca asked. "Aye," Caleb said, "with my boys." "You might not come out." "I know." She looked at him, something soft breaking through her hard eyes. "Then we ride with you," she said. Caleb didn't argue. He just nodded once. The night deepened. The wind whistled through the canyon, like a choir of ghosts. The next sunrise would bring fire and maybe blood. But for now, they sat in the quiet, strangers no longer, only survivors, stitched together by something too strong to name. They reached the edge of Red Hollow at first light. The salt mine lay like a scar in the earth. Gray rock, splintered timbers, and rusting carts sunk into the dust. A few men paced outside, rifles on shoulders, eyes lazy from overconfidence. Slaver campfires smoldered in clusters. Tattered tents flapped in the wind. And further down inside the hollowed tunnel mouths came the faintest sounds of crying. Children. Caleb, crouched behind a ridge, studied it through a spyglass, his jaw set, his breath slow. "They got lookouts at the north rise," he muttered. 6, maybe more inside the mine. His sons lay prone beside him, Jacob, Eli, Luke, and Samuel, all grown but shaped by hard soil, bad war, and their father's quiet code. Behind them, Rebecca knelt with her sisters. Each carried a rifle, or blade. The youngest, Ruth, clutched her weapon with shaking hands. Miriam murmured a prayer under her breath. Not for survival, for justice. You sure you want to be part of this? Caleb asked Rebecca. She looked toward the mine, where children cried in darkness. They stole from us once, she said. We never got back what they took. But maybe we can help someone else keep what matters. Caleb nodded once. Then we ride. The plan was simple. Jacob and Eli circled south to light the storage carts on fire, draw the guards. Luke would snipe from the ridge. Caleb and Samuel would breach the entrance. The women would guard the children once freed. They moved like wolves in mist. The first explosion hit, like a thunderclap. Flames lit the camp as carts of supplies went up. The guards shouted, running toward the blaze. A second detonation ripped through a side tent, sending dust and canvas skyward. From above, Luke's rifle cracked, one shot, then another. The men fell where they stood. Caleb and Samuel stormed the mine entrance, gunning down two who stayed behind. Inside, the air was thick, cold, and sour. They followed the weeping. By lantern light, they found them. 7 children, shackled by the ankle, bruised but breathing. One boy couldn't be more than 4. Get him out, Caleb barked. Outside, Rebecca and Miriam took the children, wrapping them in quilts from a wagon. Ruth stood watch, eyes wide but steady, finger on the trigger. Then came a roar, not fire, not wind. Gunshots. 3 riders tore into camp, slavers returning. One of them, thick as a bear and twice as mean, leapt from his saddle with a scattergun and blew the air out of a nearby tree. Caleb ran to cover. Luke dropped one of the riders with a shot to the heart. But the last slaver made it to the center of the camp, a scar-faced brute with a whip coil at his hip and rage in his veins. He grabbed Ruth, yanked her by the arm. Rebecca screamed. Miriam fired, missed. Caleb didn't shout. He walked into the open. The slaver turned, dragging Ruth with a pistol pressed against her temple. I'll kill her, he spat. No, Caleb said, stepping closer. You'll drop your gun, and you'll hang. The man laughed. You think I'm scared of you, old man? No, Caleb said, but you should be. The slaver raised a pistol, and Ruth slammed her elbow into his gut. He staggered. Caleb shot once, a clean, hard crack. The man dropped, dust rising around his body. Silence fell. The baby began to cry. It was over. The children were loaded into the wagons. Caleb and his sons buried the dead, including one of the slavers who had tried to run and fell from his horse down a ravine. No mercy, but no cruelty either. Later that day, under the shade of a cottonwood tree, just outside the hollow, they burned the whip along with the blood-stained medallion Ahote had died to deliver. Miriam placed a ring of sage beside the fire. For the ones they couldn't save, she whispered. Caleb stood apart, staring west. Rebecca approached. The baby slept against her shoulder. We've seen worse men than you, she said. I ain't a good man, he replied. But you gave us back our names, she answered. He looked at her, eyes tired. You still want to stay? With my sons? She smiled just slightly. We already chose. Weeks passed, back at the ranch, for cabins now held more than silence. Rebecca worked beside Jacob, planting new corn where only weeds had grown. Miriam taught Samuel to read his mother's old Bible. Ruth sang again, and even Eli started carving toys for the baby. Caleb kept mostly to himself, fixing fences, riding fence lines, watching the horizon like an old dog waiting for a storm. One evening, Rebecca found him at his wife's grave. She sat beside him on the bench he'd carved long ago, the wood worn by years of weather and grief. You gave them a home, she said. I gave him a chance, he replied. She placed a letter in his hand, written in her delicate, careful scrawl. For the judge in Silverton, testimony against the slavers. I wrote it all down. He nodded. I'll ride it there next week, he said. As the sun dipped low, Rebecca placed a hand on his. You ever going to come sit at the table? Caleb didn't answer right away. Then, I reckon I will. Might even stay for supper. She smiled. You'd be welcome. That night, After the wind settled and the ranch grew quiet, Caleb walked past 4 cabins, each lit by a warm lamp inside. Laughter floated on the breeze. The scent of stew from Miriam's kitchen. A baby's soft coo. He stood beneath the cottonwood and watched the stars roll slowly overhead. He unwrapped the last thing Ahode had given him, a second card medallion, this one etched with a hawk in flight. He buried it beneath the tree. No speeches, no tears, just a quiet promise of a life still being written. If this story stirred something in your soul, leave your thoughts in the comments. Like and subscribe for more forgotten frontier tales that still echo in the dust.